Okay, Mr. Customer, as we're talking about permanently stabilizing your perimeter foundation, a lot of our homeowners really appreciate understanding what caused these problems and how you came into the situation to begin with. So, to better help answer those questions, I have a few short slides here that I'm going to share with you just to help give you a better understanding of how your home was originally constructed and what soil that home rests upon. Okay? So, as we know, the main issue we're facing here is foundation settlement. We want to know why it's settling though. And to better understand that, we need to understand the different layers of the soil. So first, through erosion, wind, glacier deposits, and washout, it creates something that we call the active soil zone. Now this active soil zone receives a lot of shift and a lot of movement over the years, hence the term active. Now this active soil zone rests just above the bedrock, or most commonly referred to sometimes as the load-bearing strata. Now, this is important to us because that essentially can stabilize and support the weight of your home, okay? And so essentially, when your home is constructed, contractors will bring in something that's called fill soil. Now, this fill soil is brought in to create a flat, even surface on which they will construct the home on top of. So essentially, think of it as like layers to a cake, okay? So when your home is built, excavation is required for those forms to be put in place, those footings to be poured, foundation walls to be poured, and then your floor framing system to go on top. Once all that is completed, you then have a foundation, and then from there, your house is easily able to be constructed. Okay. Now, there are three main soil types that we need to pay attention to. We have backfill soil, man-moved soil, and native soil. Now, native soil has been naturally compacted over time, anywhere from like 100 to thousands of years. Essentially, that soil hasn't been touched, so it's not moving. And then we have backfill soil. Now, backfill soil is essentially all that soil that's pushed back in after that foundation is built. And the problem with this sometimes is that it's poorly compacted. I'll get into that here in just a moment. But then we have man-moved soil, okay? I just want to make sure though, is all this tracking for you? Okay, feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions, okay? So, what are the three causes of foundation settlement? First, we have drying and the shrinking of soil. So, you mentioned before you have kids, right? Have your kids ever left out Play-Doh before? Okay, so what happens to that Play-Doh when it's left out? Exactly, it dries and it cracks. So think of that as like your soil here in this instance. So it's drying, it's cracking, and it's shrinking and consolidating. And essentially what that's doing is it's creating these voids for that foundation to then settle down into. Making sense? Perfect. From there, we also have wetting and softening of the soils. So whenever you have a wet season or a heavy rainstorm, all that water is essentially going to follow the path of least resistance. So where do you think that water is going to go with all that dry and shrunken soil? Exactly, it's going to follow that path all the way down underneath the footing of your home, which is in turn, once again, going to create those voids for that foundation to then settle down into, okay? And lastly, we have poor compaction. So as I mentioned before, there is backfill that comes in after the foundation is put in place, and then this soil isn't compacted to the degree that it needs to be, which in turn, once again, is going to create those voids for that foundation to then settle down into, all right? So, after reviewing all this information, what do you feel like is the root cause of your foundation settling? No, yeah, you're 100% right. That totally makes sense, right? So, the next question that you might have is, well, what are my options for repair, right? So, historically, there have been a few options for repair. And I say the word historically because nowadays, these options are considered outdated or just ineffective. So, first, we have foundation replacement, concrete underpinning, and concrete and steel concentric piers. So to start off, we got concrete replacement. Now I just want to preface this real quick. You're nowhere near this point, but I do want to bring it up as a point just because it is something that can occur if the problem isn't properly addressed, okay? And hey, that's why we're out here in the first place, right? So with foundation replacement, for one, it's really damaging to the home, okay? Essentially what they're having to do is excavate all around the perimeter foundation, get in there, rip out that old foundation, and then crib up your home or jack up your home for that new foundation to be put in place. Now the problem with this is, as I said, you're excavating all around the perimeter foundation. That means any utilities in the way, like HVAC, plumbing, sewer lines, gas lines, irrigation, all that has to be ripped out, and it creates more of a hassle for you as a homeowner. Also, it's really expensive too. The average foundation wall costs anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000. Okay, and then it's also a really long repair time. Concrete typically takes 28 to 30 days to properly cure. That means they're having to build the forms to the footing, wait 28 to 30 days for that to properly cure, and then build the forms to the foundation walls, and once again wait another 28 to 30 days for that to properly cure. So, do you want to be out of your home for essentially 2 months? I wouldn't want to either, right? And once again, this is just not going to address the underlying issue here which is the soil, okay? So essentially, what do you think might happen if you're just going to rip out all that old foundation and put a brand new one right on top of that already compromised soil? Exactly, you're going to end up with the same issue that you called us out here for, okay? Next up, we have concrete underpinning. Now, I can see why contractors may go this route. However, with concrete underpinning here, the main problem that we're facing is weight. Essentially, with concrete underpinning, what they're doing is they're trying to widen that footing to provide more stabilization to your home. However, that's never the case. A lot of the times, that concrete is extremely heavy. So essentially, all you're doing is weighing down your home even more to that already uncompromised soil, okay? So, like I said, this doesn't address the underlying issue here, which is the soil. Next, we have concrete and steel concentric piers. Now, with concrete piers, have you ever taken a pencil and trying to stab it into the soil? Goes in pretty easy, right? Now, imagine 100 of those trying to jab them into the soil. What do you think might happen? You're gonna get a lot more resistance, right? And it's gonna crack along the way. So that's essentially what's happening with your concrete piers. They're gonna fabricate these concrete piers in attempts to hopefully reach load-bearing strata, which, like I mentioned before, can support the weight of your home. However, in most cases, it's going to crack before it even reaches that load-bearing strata. So it's not properly stabilizing your foundation. Then we have steel concentric piers. Kind of similar to concrete piers, but with steel concentric piers, what they are is they're steel tubes with concrete poured in them to create a hard surface for them to then push or jab into the ground in hopes of once again reaching that bedrock or load-bearing strata. However, similar to concrete piers, what happens when we take these and put them into the ground is they tend to bend or break, okay? And once again, you're not applying the proper stabilization that you need for your foundation. And once again, both of these don't address the underlying issue here, which is the soil. Do you kind of see the pattern? Okay, so can we both agree that these options aren't the best solution for you? My thoughts exactly, right? Oops. Okay. So you might be asking yourself at this point, Connor, what's my solution then, right? So that's where we come in. With Groundworks, we have created something called a settle stop push pier. Now, our engineering department has created this very informative, fantastic video that I'm going to play for you here. And afterwards, we'll take a little bit more in-depth look as to how this system works, okay?
When your home starts making popping noises, cracks develop, and doors and windows stop operating properly, it can be scary, leaving you worried and wondering how to fix it. The problem is the active, unstable soil that supports your home. Many homes were built on soil that was not properly compacted at the time of construction. As this soil compacts and collapses, your home drops as well. Another major issue is the moisture content in the soil. When the soil becomes overly dry, it contracts and shrinks, creating voids. When the soil is saturated, it washes away or becomes too soft and can't support the weight of your home. To permanently stabilize your home, you must go beyond these active, unstable soils to bedrock, or what our engineers call load-bearing strata. The settle-stop push pier system is the answer. The system utilizes steel piers to support the home on strong soils deep below the surface. Here's how it works. First, some soil is skillfully removed to expose the footing. A heavy-duty steel bracket is then secured to the cleaned and prepared footing. The push piers are then driven through the bracket deep into the earth. The weight of your home is then transferred through the piers into competent soils to prevent future settlement of your home. And not only will your home be permanently stabilized, There's also an opportunity to lift it back to its original position. So the piers rest on load-bearing strata and the home rests on the piers. No longer is your home vulnerable to ever-changing soil conditions. It is now permanently stabilized. And to ensure your peace of mind, we back it with a fully transferable lifetime warranty.
Pretty cool stuff, huh? So to dive a little bit more in depth about what this system is, essentially how the process is going to work is we're going to do some excavation around where we need to install those piers, okay? This isn't taxing to you because we're not bringing in heavy equipment like an excavator to dig out those holes, okay? And then essentially what we're going to do is we're going to undermine all the way under that footing, okay? And once we get to the bottom of that footing, we're going to clear it out for us to then install a bracket. Now this bracket is really reinforcive, okay? It's made out of galvanized steel, and the best part about this is it's heavy duty, okay? And what this does is it allows for a straight and vertical path for those push piers to be pushed down into that load-bearing strata or bedrock, okay? And then from there, we install a starter tube or an external sleeve. This external sleeve also helps prevent the pier from bending and moving out of place. So it's going to give you that vertical and straight ascension into that bedrock and ground or load-bearing strata. From there, we take a drive assembly, which is essentially a hydraulic press to push those push piers into the ground to once again reach that stabilization point of bedrock. Like I said before, we put on an external sleeve, and once again, this is going to allow for a straighter, deeper insulation, and it prevents the bending of the piers. The great thing about this too is these starter tubes have what's called on them a FRC, or a friction reducing collar. It's this little lip right here, and essentially what it's going to do is it's going to displace soil so there's no soil friction so that we can reach that load-bearing strata. And what it's going to do is it's essentially going to burr that soil up around it until it's reached that point of stabilization, and then it's going to compact in on itself to create that skin friction for it to become more stabilized. From there, we're going to put on a pier cap, and we're going to drill this bracket into the footing of your home, once again to create more stabilization for you.